My friend the other day, I said, on this age, and we can get into debates around fitness. Look, I'd rather have 80 years behind me than those 88 federal criminal counts in front of me. And so I feel very good about Joe Biden.
My message is, Gavin Newsom, I am going to expose you for the complete fraud that you are, the liar that you are, and you will never, ever be the president of this country.
California politics just shifted from reality TV to a full-blown soap opera, with Gavin Newsom taking center stage, but the plot twist isn't driven by pundits or protesters. It's coming from a California sheriff who ditched his badge for a megaphone and called out the governor's mess, exposing chaos so wild it feels like Sacramento secretly runs on popcorn and plot twists.
Completely caused by California government. And that's the only reason why California is no longer the greatest state in the country. We have the greatest businesses, the greatest people, greatest business mind, the greatest innovators, the greatest creators, the greatest entrepreneurs in the country. My wife and I were fortunate enough to go to Europe last year. We paid for a sommelier to come in and make sure that we learned everything about Italian wine and all of that stuff. The first introductions, where are you from? California. And he laughed. And he said, you guys...
If you're enjoying this, don't forget to subscribe. It helps more than you think. California politics has entered the twilight zone when a sheriff, normally focused on deputies, patrols, and keeping fugitives from turning county jails into Airbnbs, suddenly jumps into the political octagon with Gavin Newsom, not with polite statements but with a full-blown truth bomb that's left the governor's PR team scrambling for
Proud to be governor of California. Fourth largest economy on planet Earth. Fourth largest economy in the world, $4.1 trillion. You know why? It's because of immigrants. It's because people from all around the world want to come and live their lives out loud here in California, the most diverse state in the world's most diverse democracy. 27% of this state is foreign-born. And you talk about a state of mind for people that are foreign-born that come here for new beginnings, the entrepreneurial.
It's not every day a sheriff steps into the spotlight like a cowboy turned commentator, throwing shade at the polished governor of America's most chaotic paradise. But that's exactly what happened to lawmen watching California unravel faster than a cheap sweater from a gas station clearance rack finally stood up
and we're just looking at each other like, how would someone across the world know that we have a lunatic for a governor? I was concerned with my career, my life, my family, my own home, and making sure that I was...
Chief of police from the largest police agency in the country said that they are being overwhelmed. Governor Newsom needs to put his phone down, go sit in his house behind the comfort of his TV screen and a couch, and be quiet, because he is doing nothing but fueling.
California's so-called progressive utopia PR campaign just took a dent the size of a pothole on the 405 freeway. Think of the state as a reality show that never got canceled. On one side, you've got beaches, movie stars, and organic kale smoothies with a side of guilt-free living, and on the other, spiraling crime, tent cities under every overpass, and sheriffs left wondering if they signed up to run disaster.
Stay out of the way of law enforcement. He knows nothing about this. He has enabled this lawless act that is going on right now. This has been years in the making that he has encouraged. So quite frankly, I don't care what he says. He says everything in a disingenuous manner for his own personal political gain, and we are suffering the...
In a disingenuous push for personal political gain, Californians are left suffering the consequences. And in the middle of it all, Gavin Newsom struts with hair so perfect it looks maintained by a full-time stylist. Armed with angel tears and unicorn hairspray, he's mastered the art of talking like California is one avocado toast away from paradise, shaking hands on the national stage while pretending Sacramento is the West Coast version of heaven. But the sheriffs aren't buying the glossy brochure. That's where the sheriff's bombshell lands. This wasn't some polite "we have concerns" memo. It was ripping the bandage off and exposing the festering wound underneath, accusing state leadership of playing a dangerous game of pretend where crime stats are massaged like a Hollywood facelift. Homelessness is spun as if it's a minor inconvenience like running out of oat.
And lied to from the very beginning. The politicians, California politicians, the mayor of Los Angeles, our governor, have completely failed in that nothing was happening in the beginning. It was allowed to spiral out of control, and then they have created this narrative that completely defies facts and a timeline that we know.
911. The sheriff essentially pointed at Newsom's polished image and said, That's not California. That's a movie set, and while Californians weren't exactly shocked, they were definitely entertained. Social media turned into a meme factory overnight, with some cheering him on like a new Sheriff Woody saving the town from a slick-haired villain, while others clutched their soy lattes and dismissed him as a cowboy stuck in the past. But the real shockwaves came from the fact that a man in uniform openly cracked the facade. Because sheriffs aren't influencers and they don't do what he did was call out the massive disconnect between Sacramento's glossy policies and ground-level reality, where crime has turned shoplifting into a hobby with people treating stores like game shows. Homelessness has transformed city blocks into grim camping festivals without music or showers. And fentanyl.
They keep calling it a peaceful protest, mostly peaceful, whatever they want to call it. But the reality is that law enforcement officers are being attacked, property is being destroyed, and it is out of control violence that really they're trying to deny.
Newsom keeps smiling and waving at podiums, pretending California is a model for the nation. It's like hosting a dinner party where the kitchen's on fire, the guests are brawling, and the host won't stop bragging about the wine. The sheriff wasn't buying it. He called the whole act what many Californians already suspected, not leadership, but gaslighting on a statewide scale. And this wasn't some backwater sheriff from a town with 2 traffic lights, this was a lawman with clout. A platform big enough to turn heads beyond his county line. The reaction was split. In rural California, folks practically threw parades, thrilled that someone finally called out the emperor, strutting around without clothes. Well, except that flawless soutante combo, while in the urban centers where progressive policies are treated like sacred scrolls. Outrage erupted over a sheriff daring to challenge the governor instead of just smiling, nodding, and arresting bad guys without mentioning the political.
It's boot on our backs, keeping us down with over-regulation, activism, appeasement of activists, instead of taking care of the majority of Californians as a whole. And it's an agenda. It is a complete agenda of making sure that government is in control of all of our lives instead of us being in control of government. And so the only reason I'm doing this is to restore.
Of course, social media devoured it like a buffet. Memes of Newsom as a magician pulling crime stats out of a hat, jokes about sheriffs becoming the new wave of influencers, and tweets declaring, "Forget Instagram models, I'm following sheriffs now." It was hilarious, ironic chaos. But the story gets spicier because this isn't just about California. Newsom has been polishing his national image like a teenager waxing a sports car he doesn't own, angling himself as a future presidential contender who could swoop in with sharp suits and an even sharper jawline. While Californians argue over whether their state is paradise or purgatory, the rest of the country is watching, and what they see isn't glossy commercials of palm trees and sunsets, but sheriffs standing up and saying, "Don't believe the hype." And in politics, perception is everything. Do you believe the governor with a hair gel budget rivaling a small country insisting California is thriving? Or the sheriff on the ground pointing to overflowing jails, rising crime, and a public safety system stretched thinner than Los Angeles patients?
It's supposed to be that government is supposed to be working for us. We are not supposed to be working to increase the size of government. And that's the only reason why California is no longer the greatest state in the country. You can have our politicians say it as much as they want, but we are the laughingstock of the rest of the country. We are the laughingstock of the world.
The terrifying part for Newsom: once one sheriff speaks out, others might follow, because sheriffs talk, they meet, they swap stories, and if more of them start exposing what's really happening behind the glossy California postcard, the whole narrative shifts from one sheriff versus the governor to a chorus of lawmen declaring the emperor's parade is over. That mic drop moment didn't just rattle Sacramento. It felt like the entire state had tuned into a new season of California Behind the Curtain, where Newsom was no longer the slick, ribbon-cutting governor but the clueless host of a dinner party with burnt food and brawling guests, still smiling like everything's fine. The irony was delicious. Sheriffs almost never go rogue. Yet Newsom's carefully polished image got bulldozed by a badge and a cowboy hat. And ordinary Californians couldn't help but relate. After all, daily life in the Golden State often means dodging sidewalk encampments, triple-checking if your
The San Diego Board of County Supervisors passed an internal policy that prohibits the Sheriff's Department from cooperating with federal immigration authorities like ICE. This comes off the heels of Governor Gavin Newsom calling for an emergency session to safeguard California's laws and values before the Trump administration takes office in January. One of the key issues at the forefront of the conversation is California's sanctuary status for undocumented immigrants. But not everyone is on board with these actions. San Diego Sheriff Kelly Martinez came out in opposition to the policy and said that she would not comply. Even though Martinez is not a conservative, she is responsible for maintaining public safety and for abiding.
Have been living in this circus for years. And when a sheriff finally got on stage to confirm they weren't crazy, it wasn't just validation, it was catharsis, with people practically tossing confetti while the governor's defenders reacted like kids told Santa Claus wasn't real, scrambling to spin it as exaggeration or politicization. But that's the problem. For many, this is the real California. Which makes the sheriff's truth bomb devastating. Because he wasn't inventing stats, he was describing what his deputies see every day. Arrests undone before the paperwork's dry. Backup calls that go unanswered because half the force is swamped with overdoses. Break-ins and storm drain encampments. These aren't abstract policy debates, they're frontline nightmares, and that's where it gets
about it. And he's like, everyone wants to go to the United States. And it used to be everyone wants to go to California. Here, no one wants to go to California anymore. They'll go to California for Disneyland. That's it. And it's embarrassing. It's absolutely embarrassing that we are no longer the greatest state in the country, and we're still all the same people. We're still all the same businesses. It's our government that has completely changed and brought us to this laughingstock position, and I'm going to take it back. I take some blame for it because I wasn't standing on the rooftops yelling to everyone that we had to stop this, look what's going on.
Newsom has been polishing a national image, sharp suits, perfect hair, rehearsed lines about being America's progressive champion. Himself on a bigger stage was never subtle. But when sheriffs start pointing out the rot under the floorboards, that image takes a real hit. Sheriffs carry a different kind of credibility, boots on the ground authority. Not polished spinso when one calls out the governor. People listen. This isn't a guaranteed career ender for Newsom. He still has defenders, resources, and endless cameras to catch that practiced smile. But the sheriff didn't land a knockout so much as pry a door open, and once that crack appears, others will peek through. If more sheriffs speak up, it stops looking like a lone dissent and starts looking like a pattern.
My life, my family, my own home, and making sure that I was secure, I kind of just wasn't paying attention to what government was doing, and now it's affecting everyone. So I will make sure that what I came to California for, my California dream, I will make sure that every kid growing up now has that dream, and even the kids that now are from 20 to 35, that it's impossible for them to make their California dream. I'll make sure that I make up for it, and we return the ability to look at that Gold Coast as the beacon for the...
Where the irony hits Shakespearean levels, Newsom's critics didn't need to exaggerate. All they had to do was let the sheriff describe his reality, and it already sounded like satire. Rising crime, overwhelmed police, exploding homelessness, and drugs spreading like wildfire, while Sacramento insists California is thriving. It's the kind of gaslighting that makes you wonder if the governor's staff comes to work with reality distortion glasses. And in politics that matters, because opponents don't need a knockout punch, they just have to keep pointing at the cracks until the whole thing caves in. That's the brilliance of what this sheriff did. He didn't just criticize policy, he told a story, one that lined up with what Californians were already living, and when someone's story